Hello and welcome to FCPA TV. I'm Howard Sklar. Today I want to talk about state-owned entities and whether or not state-owned entities are instrumentalities under the FCPA, and therefore all employees are government officials for purposes of the Act. You know, companies have been dealing with this for a while, and compliance officers generally adopt the same sort of realistic, what's really going on test that the department uses, and that the courts have thereafter adopted. So this is the Multipart non-exclusive test. You look at a whole bunch of different factors and you weigh it and you say, you know, what's really going on here? Are these people government or are they not? Some of those factors include degree of ownership, degree of control, whether or not the company performs a traditionally public function like providing water or electricity. You look at a whole bunch of different things, whether or not they get special privilege because they are who they are, so whether or not they get tax breaks or don't have to pay taxes on their income, whether or not they're expected to make a profit, that kind of thing. All of these things get thrown together and you make a decision. That is, I think, both from a legal perspective and from a policy perspective, the right test. That's what the government should be looking at, and that's what corporations should be looking at, and that's what's been going on for quite a while now. Where I think all of that breaks down is with regard to China. And when it comes to that market, most companies that I've spoken to adopt sort of a everybody in China is a government official attitude, because there's so much integration of the Chinese government into private industry, and it is so opaque. And from a cultural perspective, they just say, you know what, we don't want to deal with it. Everybody in China is a government official. I think that is sort of an unsustainable, untenable, unfair position to put corporations in, because it really neglects what I like, which is what's really going on. What's the reality on the ground, and that makes your decision for you. It's not, you know, a blanket, everybody in China is a government official. And the reason this makes a difference is that companies usually have different standards that they use for interactions with the public sector than they do with interactions with the private sector. As much as I've been having a nice discussion, debate, dialogue, as we say in the Sedona conference, I've been having dialogue with another compliance professional about whether or not that should be the case. It is the case right now that companies generally treat private sector employees and their interactions with private sector employees differently from how they treat public sector employees. So treating everybody in China as a government official puts additional restrictions on corporations that need not be there. But the kinds of distinguishing analyses that companies perform in other markets, they don't perform in China. And that's unfair. It's unfair from a trade perspective, it's unfair from a relationship perspective, and it's unfair from a corporate perspective. Not that any of this analysis condones bribery of government officials, but from a policy perspective, even when in the China market a company, a private company, could be considered government from a legal perspective, I think, and if I can be so bold, I actually recommend to the Department of Justice that within their guidance they say that unless a Chinese citizen works for the government of China, that they are not going to be treated as government officials, as foreign officials, for purposes of the Act. We should, simply put, say unless you are a government worker, you are not a government official if you work in China. This would also more, I think, bend to the reality of the situation, which is that, you know, Chinese workers generally aren't government, at least for purposes of what's really going on. There's government involvement. You know, the Chinese government is deeply involved in the rules, regulations, and mechanisms of private industry. But it is just that. It is private industry. So unless they are really, truly pulling a paycheck from the government, I think that when it comes to China, they should not conclude that anybody other than a government worker is a government official for purposes of the Act. Just one man's opinion.